including the most recent one. How many of you know about Lucasville prison uprising? A few. And some of you know this due to Staughton's efforts to write few books and even a play recently about this. Book is called Lucasville, The Untold Story of Prison Uprising. And the fascinating thing about Lucasville is that this is the longest prison rebellion in American history. It happened in 1993 in Northern Ohio. But it was carried together by the Aryan Brotherhood, Sunni Muslims, and black gangster disciples, 3 different gangs, who came together and who fought the prison guards, killed a few of them in the process, and created an amazing society. Just the most amazing example of interracial solidarity that you can imagine. It's pretty amazing. I mean, they were all, now they're called Lucasville 5. 5 people who are arrested and who are waiting execution, they're on death row. But one of them is writing a book. His name is Kit Lamar, Bomani Shakur. He's writing a book now for PM Press, his memoirs. And as you can imagine, he's a Sunni Muslim from the name. But the introduction to the book is written by his best friend, Jason Robb, who is the president of the Aryan Brotherhood for the state of Ohio. Now, this is an interesting way of, thinking about where does solidarity and interracial solidarity comes from. And if these people can do this in prison, how is it possible that we outside of prison are still struggling so much with the attempt to create a truly interracial movement? And why are we unable to do so? Why are we unable to learn from them? And how is it possible that this remarkable story is still relatively unknown? And there are many stories, and many similar stories, and many of them are in this book, recorded in this book. But our idea was to celebrate the life of Staughton Lynd, to make it useful for the younger generation of activists, but also to formulate a few ideas that can be helpful, to offer them, not to impose them, to offer a few ideas that might be helpful for the rebuilding of the social movement that we really need today. Unfortunately, and maybe some of you will disagree with me, there is not much of the left in the United States. There are a lot of professors who meet at the places like Left Forum or whatever conferences. There are a lot of pretty sectarian political parties and groups, not very friendly groups. There are a lot of individuals practicing all kinds of, political activity. But there is nothing much in terms of actually building a real movement, as the movement that existed in the time of the Wobblies or the time of Haymarket anarchists, or, how is that possible? And we decided that it would be useful to put few ideas and to try to offer them in terms of trying to rebuild this movement. And the first idea, of course, is the idea of self-activity. And by self-activity, I mean that the idea, the revolutionary strategy, should not be about taking the state power, but rather, just like Zapatistas or industrial workers of the world, about creating these horizontal centers of self-activity that will be horizontally linked. And that we should not create a movement that would aspire to make the same mistake that movements have been historically making time and again, of trying to think about a revolution, not as a process, but as some kind of an apocalyptic moment when you take the state power and then everything is over. Solidarity unionism, which is the phrase, today I think this is what industrial workers of the world accepted, is an idea that comes from Staughton Lynd. He's the one who first formulated it, and it's a very simple idea. It's the idea that the way to organize is through rank and file workers' self-activity, through direct action, where you bypass all the institutions of the system as much as this is possible. And PM Press also published another book which was talking about this, which was called Labor Law for Rank and Filers, from Staughton Lynd and Daniel Gross, who started the Starbucks campaign for IWW.
That's actually a reprint of an older edition of the same book.
Yeah, of an excellent book. So if you have interest in this, you should definitely read it. But the idea of self-activity, I think, is very important. The other idea is the idea of solidarity. And solidarity is something that we take for granted. We talk about solidarity all the time. But solidarity is extremely important, especially for Staughton. He talks about solidarity on the outside, creating community of struggle. But he's also talking about solidarity on the inside, the way that we behave towards each other. I don't know if I agree completely with Staughton on this, but Staughton believes that the greatest failure of historical movements, social movements on the left in the United States, is the fact that they were not capable enough of behaving like comrades, behaving like brothers and sisters, of creating an effective, truly effective community of struggle. Staughton doesn't think that it was the state who destroyed the movements. Yeah, sure, there was a lot of repression, but he thinks it's the way that we behaved, or we rather did not behave, with and towards each other. And I think there is a lot of truth to that. I don't know how much I agree with him, but there is definitely some truth to that. And Staughton thinks that there is, and I think that the history of the left in the Bay Area is actually very illustrative on that account, is a history of a limitless capacity for self-destruction. It is really hard to understand. I mean, we are up against so much. How is it possible that we are not capable of behaving like brothers and sisters? And how do we and why do we expect that people will take us seriously and trust us with building a new world if we are not able to behave with each other and towards each other with love and kindness and generosity and understanding? And I think that Staughton is right. People will stay away unless we change certain things about the way we organize, and unless we change certain things about the way that we think about solidarity. And Staughton offers something else, and that is the idea of accompaniment, which is the idea of solidarity, which is different than the idea that Marxist-Leninists traditionally had, the idea of colonization, of vanguardism. No, Staughton says, he tried it. It doesn't work. To colonize a factory, to go from the outside to a community and to impose your point of view, it doesn't work. The other thing that Staughton criticizes all the time is the idea of a friendly intellectual, of somebody who is working at the university, who is completely divested from struggles, who is writing in the university library, who doesn't have a clue about the struggles that are going outside of the university. And instead of this, he's offering something else. He's offering something that he calls accompaniment. And accompaniment comes from Oscar Romero, one of the great heroes of Staughton. You all know, I'm sure, who Oscar Romero was. And Oscar Romero, when he used the word accompaniment, he meant a particular form of revolutionary practice and mutual aid, where the revolutionary would go and spend the time with workers and other oppressed people. So he would leave Berkeley, he would leave San Francisco, he would find people who are actually involved in struggle, and people are always and everywhere involved in struggle. And he would join them as an equal, not as somebody who's going to teach them something, not as somebody who's going to be a disciple, but somebody who is going to go as an equal and engage with these people. And this is very close to those of you who are familiar with especificismo and ideas of Uruguayan anarcho-syndicalists. It's very close to that. The idea is you have a useful skill. You go to people in struggle. You offer that useful skill to them. And the relationship between you and people who are struggling is a relationship of a gift, of exchange.